Hello, this is BioEnchanted, and welcome back to Fairly Odd Parents Breaking the Rules. Time for level 6. This level is my least favourite one. I had to use save states here and edit quite a lot out because it's got a lot of stuff that's loose.
She has extra classes, and because she's my babysitter this weekend, I have to go to school too. It's so unfair.
She'll probably make some dumb wish, too. At least that would give us the chance to find more pages of the rules.
That's if my teacher, Crackpot Crocker, doesn't detect the wish power and try to get it for himself.
Ooh, I don't like him. Adults shouldn't believe in fairies. It's madness. And he won't stop until he proves that we exist. I don't want to be proved.
Out of the way, twerp! Timmy Turner, you creep! You planned that! You didn't have to stand there! You just got unlucky! I'm always unlucky! I wish you got all my bad luck for a day! Then you'd see how difficult my life can be!
Did you hear that? Bad luck, she said.
That Timmy Turner doesn't know what he's in for.
One noticeable thing here is that the game doesn't know how to overlap dialogue, so the characters always awkwardly say each line one after the other, even when it would make more sense for them not to.
So, here we are, in school, on a Saturday. How could life possibly get any worse?
It's creepy here. It feels empty, with a silence that I don't like. All the other kids are at home, hon. Probably having fun. No!
What's wrong with you guys?
Timmy! We're in trouble.
That was unlucky.
That's what we're trying to tell you. The school is full of anti-fairies. They bring bad luck.
I can't see anything.
Here, try these.
Hello, Timmy Turner. You know, you're quite famous in the fairy world.
We've always wanted to play with you.
Back! Back, evil anti-fairies! Oh no! Anti-fairies in the school, and us with no powers! I smell Vicky!
Worse still, if Mr. Crocker finds the anti-fairies, he can use them to prove his theory. We have to catch the anti-fairies before he notices them.
We have no choice but to look for wish stars. We're gonna need wishes to get out of this one.
One thing that I found would be quite interesting in one of these sort of things would be if Tim ended up working with the anti-fairies temporarily simply because they're actually in danger here too, because of Mr. Crocker. That could have been very interesting, kind of a unusual plot line. And yeah, that kind of caught me off guard. I completely forgot about that gag. That could have been like a cute idea though, but yeah, I'm doing badly at avoiding this. I do quite like the idea of that though, that like, you go into another part of the school and something traditionally unlucky happens, like it forcing you to walk through. And it forcing you to walk through the ladder, for example, to trigger the bad luck is an interesting idea. I quite like that it's not just the anti-fairies willy-nilly doing things, they have to follow those kind of rules of bad luck. Main problem, of course, is that every single door is a wrecking ball. It's like you could easily do something a bit different here, like mix it up, maybe have different things come out of different doors, or like even just vary when the wrecking balls actually appear, make it seemingly random. But it's just kind of move, and stop. It's just kind of very boring the way it's actually implemented, which is a shame. It's a funny idea. This wish star's annoying. We have to be kind of just constantly cutting corners to actually catch it, because it will never stop.
Now we can arm ourselves against the anti-fairies! Oh, wish for a halibut, or maybe a herring.
Something a little less fishy, please. I wish for an anti-fairy capture device.
Available from all good retailers, and on the internet.
Whoa, nice one, guys. It's a lucky horseshoe-powered anti-fairy magnet.
It's a magnetotronoid. You can use it anytime we're near an anti-fairy. Try it on me. Don't try it on me. I'm ticklish. If you keep the anti-fairy snagged in the beam for long enough, you'll capture it. Yeah, and once they're captured, they're under your control.
They like bad luck? I'll give them bad luck.
So, you made it this far.
But this is the end of the line for you.
Say your prayers, Anti-Fairy. Yeah, this is the end of the line, Vio. You already said that.
This is an alright mechanic. It gets messed around with later on, but for now, it's a fairly basic meter. Just like the helicopter was in the very second level. Luckily, it kind of goes down a lot fast. Seems to go down a bit faster than the helicopter did. It doesn't take nearly as long. And it's not nearly as annoying. And again, it does get varied later, but here I kind of got a little turned around because this part of the level is a little bit confusing because of all the... Of course I meant to go through that open door, but because it's already open, I kind of figured that was the door I'd already been through. When that wasn't the case, so I was like, oh, that must be the door I came from, because I didn't see the safe door. So I'm like checking for any extra lives around here, and of course, crash cards, but nope. Crash, I mean, Crimson Chain cards. And yeah, this is just back to the previous star thing. Now that's when I realised it's like, oops, let's just move on and go the right way, shall we? Now, it does always open away from you when you go in the right direction. I should have noticed that, but I didn't. That was partially on me. I've always found Mr. Crocker a relatively interesting character because of the whole backstory they gave him with the, being a young child, a well-liked young child who lost his fairies and didn't understand what happened afterwards because of the whole forced amnesia thing.
Don't worry, it's only fairies, fairies, yes, yes, fairies, it must be fairies, fairies!
It's Crocker, all right. And he's still obsessed with fairies.
Oh, we can't be caught! Jorgen von Strangle is angry enough already! I'm not scared of Crocker or Jorgen! No, wait, yes I am! I'm terrified!
Don't worry, I'll just avoid Crocker while I collect more wish stars.
We'll help! We can create a magic device that will warn you of how close Crocker is! That's right! If the Crockometer is green, you're safe. If it turns orange, Crocker's getting close. And if it turns red, run! Run, do you hear me? Run!
Yeah, basically, like, I always thought that Crocker isn't really done very well by the series in general, because he doesn't get treated with enough humanity for what the character actually is. Because he comes across as a kind of deranged villain, but what he really is a child, given his backstory. He's just a child who lost his fairies at a young age, didn't understand what happened to him because of the forced amnesia, and has been looking for them ever since reminding himself via his device that fairies actually do exist. He's kind of forgotten why he's looking for them, and of course that is even what he's doing, but on an unconscious level, that's all he's always be. A 10-year-old who's been the 10-year-old mentally for 30 years trying to find his fairies again, and not even understanding that's what he's doing. He could have had an interesting angle with that, and the series just kind of didn't. It treats him as a very kind of throwaway kind of, oh, he's bad because he's crazy, but it's like, no, he's crazy because Jorgen von Strangle deleted a large part of his personality in ripping out the fairy memories that he had.
I don't think it likes being in a classroom.
And the memories of all the good deeds he did. Basically, Jorgen von Strangle has given him permanent brain damage and caused severe problems for him throughout his entire life because of how harsh fairy law is. I mean, it's not the kind of show that will go into that, I mean, it's not Steven Universe, but, you know, it's the sort of thing where they could have done more interesting stories with these characters, and they just kind of didn't.
Timmy, we need some speed. There are still 2 anti-fairies left, and we have to get to them before Crocker does.
We have to pass through the school sports fields and parking lots next. I wish for some super sneakers to make our progress easier.
Sounds like fun.
Whoa, cool spring shoes.
I thought you'd like them. Oh, you'll jump higher now. Much higher.
Excellent. Let's try them out.
Because even the series kind of like, it kind of hinted at aspects of that as well, like with Vicky's magically created boyfriend, for example, in that one episode that turned out to be as much of an arse as she was, and wound up stealing all of her stuff and running off with Crocker's mother. not realizing she was who he was marrying, but that's what ended up happening to him, because that Crocker's behavior in that scene is that of a child excited to meet his new stepfather. A guy who's been probably with that father most of his formative years, and has just latched on the idea of having one so badly that his idea of what the father will even do with him is very childish. You know, it's like Crocker has hints of being an interesting idea with, like, basically he's a scared child who is as trapped in the school, honestly, by himself as the kids are. He treats himself as having all the power in his relationship with the children, but in reality, because of his mental illness and his just general obsession, he's trapped himself in the school more than anything else. He is completely sealed away. He has screwed himself over and he just can't see it because of his obsession. What he needs is a therapist more than anything else. But there's a lot of characters like that. They're like, you could imply interesting things about them, but the series just doesn't really think about what they're implying. Okay.
Stepping on cracks in the sidewalk is really unlucky. But I shall dispense with the opportunity to put your mother in traction, and instead try and get you to break your back, little boy.
No! You make me mad!
Now, that previous thing, you kind of skipped over that, but the wish we just had was not that good. It was okay, it's kind of interesting, but it was completely out of your own control. Timmy just kind of bounces randomly all over the place. Well, not randomly, but he just bounces, and you have to control it, so it's not even like much of a gameplay there. You're just steering him like normal, it's just now instead of walking, he's constantly jumping. And yeah, I find this platforming part rather annoying, because trying to get on this first trampoline is a real pain. This part's theoretically interesting, but again, some aspects of the mechanics don't quite fit. Another character who again, Butch Hartman, honestly, that I feel is done a disservice by the series she's in, was actually Ember from Danny Phantom, because the series actually kind of mentions through her song that she used to be human. Unlike many of the ghosts who are purely supernatural in origin, maybe even the box ghost, the lunch lady, it kind of implies they used to be human as well. Ember is... Look at what Ember is. She's an angsty teenager. She's a girl who died likely very young, and if you listen to the lyrics of her song, she died in fairly tragic circumstances. She's obsessed with being remembered because she was stood up, essentially, by her dates, who kind of like either forgot or ceased to care about her or never cared in the first place. She was about to elope with someone on a, as the lyrics put it, one called December, and they never showed up. And she died. Most likely of hypothermia, and maybe was cremated later on. I'm not entirely certain how the Ember top part actually fits in there, but it's an interesting backstory they could have done some interesting stuff with. Given her, like, obsession with being remembered especially, that really fits in with that backstory of her being forgotten in a very kind of corpse-bride kind of a way. But because the series doesn't really care about the emotional stakes, it doesn't do anything with it, which is kind of a shame. Because she could have had some interesting storylines going on with that, like humanizing her in a way that the other ghosts like Skulker don't really get.
Oh no, the gate's
Because you even get...
I better be quick.
Because even in the movie Ultimate Enemy, they, which I love, by the way, the lunch lady and box ghost even get humanized quite a lot because they fall in love and somehow manage to have an offspring of their own, the ghost box lunch, who is a punchline, but it leaves some interesting stuff it implies some interesting stuff about the box ghost in the future. Because with the box ghost, you see the box ghost in the future, but you never see the lunch lady. And in the future, the box ghost is much more powerful than he ever was, which implies...
Playground obstacle course and your spine is still in one piece. I wasted a crack stepping for this.
I am still gonna suck you into my net.
Go on, Timmy!
My god, the trash cans are loud, they're screwing with the audio balance everywhere, but what I was about to say was it kind of implies that, fairly obviously, that the lunch lady and Box Ghost got together and had box lunch, and then Dan Phantom, or however you call him, or Evil Danny, or whatever you prefer to go by, I kind of like Dan Phantom, killed the lunch lady, necessitating the Box Ghost suddenly taking himself much more seriously, because now he was a single father dealing with a daughter, and a psychopath, I won't use that term, incredibly dangerous ghost going around, that could easily have killed both of the others, so he of course had to learn how to defend himself properly and become a more powerful adversary so that he could protect his daughter from Dan Phantom.
Crocker again. And look at all these doors. He could be behind any one of them.
Ah, fairies! No fairies here. They must be somewhere. Where are the fairies? We'll reactivate the Crockometer. It should give you some warning if he's close. Do you remember the colors?
Of course I do. Green is safe, orange is beware, red is run like heck.
And purple means answer hazy. Ask again later. Now let's finish charging our wands. Good shoot, Timmy Turner.
Yeah, this is kind of an annoying part, because Crocker's just always right on top of you, and it sucks. This is where I start using save states in this level. Because this part I wasn't sure how many times I get cooked. You have to be right up against the thing. I mean, it's fairly basic with them, but you have to be right up against it or Crocker will see you, and that's really annoying. There's a part coming up that I really want save states for, because it's just bad, because it doesn't control well at all, and it takes all control away from you except for moving side to side. You'll see that in a minute. It's just frustrating. Like that, for example, I have no way of getting through that. There's a lot of villains in a lot of Butch Hartman stuff that could have been more interesting had that been the show he was writing. But because that's not what he's trying to do, he just kind of leaves them hanging, which in my opinion does a massive disservice to the character.
Hello? Gotcha! Oh.
I mean, the video games with their questionable canon could have been a really good place to explore those characters in more detail, given the longer runtime, and more general higher stakes that video games tend to have compared to cartoon episodes, but again, that's just not what the writers were trying to do, and this is the annoying part that I kind of abuse save states for, because it's really frustrating. Yeah, I'm using menus to save states, so it's kind of taking longer than I should do, because
Get away from this corridor as quickly as possible.
We also need to open up those locked doors ahead. The solution's obvious.
It is?
It is? Timmy, if you would.
The wish? I wish for whatever Cosmo's thinking of.
No, it's not safe in Cosmo's head.
Very powered jet boost. Awesome.
I have a foot inside me. Isn't it great? Timmy, we'll zoom you forward. You just concentrate on moving left and right and dodge stuff, okay?
Sure, Cosmo Boost. Let's jet.
this is annoying because it's constantly pushing you forward. But yeah, I had to use menus because then I tried to create shortcut keys. It didn't work at all. I ended up screwing up the save state and having to play through half the level again, which I wasn't going to happen again, so... So I'm kind of save stating very regularly throughout this sequence because stuff like the controls aren't very good. It will often like slam me into the wall, and if you just brush against the wall on the other side, you will die. And it's really frustrating. Music's nice, but generally it's really frustrating. Also, Wanda's complaint about being a boot doesn't really fit, given early in the level, her and Cosmo also turned into shoes to give him the super jumping powers. So where's her complaint that time? You could just about see Timmy's red and green shoes, after all. Maybe pink and green, rather. And that's what I mean. That's why I left that one in, so you could see how finicky the controls were. I barely touched the stick and I went slamming right into the wall. It's just not a very precise minigame mechanic. I mean, it's nowhere near... There's a similar level, actually, in the Knight Rider game on PS2, which is much more interesting, because it's longer, there's more varied things, but also the controls are actually good enough to work with it. There we go, that's that done. The most annoying part of the entire thing.
That's right. 7 years, count 'em, of bad luck.
It's the fairy anti-final. The final fairy anti. The anti-final fairy. The final anti-fairy.
Catch me if you can.
Because one thing I always like with games is when they screw with canon. Because games have freedom to do that kind of thing that most adaptations of shows don't. For example, like, they could have messed with canon in this, but they kind of just ignore it and make kind of a mess as a result. Well, unlike the second game, which, as we'll see when we get to that one, actually kind of respects the canon and builds on it. Well, instead of ignoring it completely like this one does and making absolutely no sense. But also, like, I quite like when games build on the canon in a way that makes the canon just completely bizarre, but still fits the original story. Like, the Over the Hedge game, for example, it summarizes the first three levels of the game summarize the entire movie, and that's fine, because the movie's okay, it's a bit, but then, after those 3 levels, it goes completely off the rails, and the plot just kind of goes wherever the heck it wants to go. And you end up with, like, Vincent on your side, the giant bear, being convinced to help work with you to deal with the common enemy you suddenly have, and it's like, it's such a weird story, but it works so well because it keeps the original canon going. It just kind of expands on it. Like the idea that Vincent, when they claimed, oh, Vincent went back to the Rockies, he just never made it to the Rockies. The animal control people claim he got sent there, but they were lying. It's that sort of thing where it builds on the canon in a way that doesn't invalidate the former canon, but makes it generally more interesting than the original movie was, because it makes it completely mental. And that's always fun because it makes it unpredictable. Well, in this game, it's kind of unpredictable because you just don't quite know where things are going to go because it just doesn't really fit anything. And yeah, I got hit by the box. Whoops. Now, there's nothing that really makes any kind of logical sense in the game. So you can't tell how things are going to play out. There's no logical progression in the story or anything like that. It's just things happen because the writers wanted them to happen, as opposed to because the world allows them to happen. I mean, there is middle ground there, of course. But, for the most part, if you're going to completely ignore canon, at least think it through.
Crimson Chin cards. These usually get confiscated in school because they're not educational.
But you learned everything you know from the Crimson Chin.
I kind of like this set piece, though. The problem is the library is quite a maze. And at this particular point I got a little confused by a bad check, well, not a bad checkpoint, but the fact that because it's such a very similar looking level to itself, I got a little bit turned around here, because it's very easy for that to happen, because it's just the same textures over and over and over again. Which is visually, like, it's an interesting enough idea for a level, but visually it's just kind of dull, and here I got kind of turned around. Because that looked just like the corner I just went through, but it wasn't. That's where the Crimson Chin card was, by the way. That's why I'm coming all the way back here by mistake. Because it's like, this looks new, because it's got stars, but it's not new. It's just what I've already... It's just a dead end. But we're coming up to one thing I actually quite like with this level, which is like a variation on the mechanics, what we've just learned, which I quite like the way it adds a little something to it. I kind of wish each thing had done something similar to it, but like the fact that the first 2 instances of the mechanic are the exact same kind of spoils it a bit, because it's like this part of the game coming up shows that they could have added to it at the time, but didn't. Yeah, here's where I realised I got completely turned around and get... There we go, that put me back at the checkpoint. I recognise exactly where I am now, so that's better. I'll go this way. That's a lot better. Thankfully, I kind of reset the checkpoint, I think, to get back over there again, so I can recognise that painting. Or photo. I can't tell what it's supposed to be, because the art style makes them so homogeneous. Is it a painting? Is it a photo? Is it a cartoon? Who knows? It just looks like the guy. So let's actually go for the final one of these little challenges, shall we?
Timmy Turner? But how? A kid like you should have been terrified of my book-based bad luck.
I'm not scared of your books or your luck. Prepare to be magnetronilated.
Let that anti-fairy have it, Timmy! No! Keep it for yourself and use it! Oh, I see. Sorry.
This is the interesting part, the fact that it actually adds obstacles to the path now. You have to pay attention to both the meter and the screen itself, and leap over the blocks at the right time. That's interesting. They could have done interesting things with that in the second fight in these kind of fights in the level, but they just kind of didn't. And that's kind of a shame. But I quite like the way the door kind of opens at the end there, though. It doesn't really make sense to, but it shows where you're meant to go next. I kind of like that this is where the level kind of gets a little bit weird. It's always more interesting when levels get a bit weird. This one kind of fits the original story as well.
Ooh, a phone booth! Let's call Timmy! I guess you should answer that, Timmy. You better look around first.
I believe this might be elaborating on something from the show, but I can't quite remember. There's little optional platforming stuff we can do around here to get some stars on these shelves, but we've got a lot of lives here and we're kind of done with the hard parts, so why bother? And here's the most obvious place. That's the most obvious place where it gets hurt by the bad choreography.
There's no way back. I guess we go forward.
Yeah, that's the most obvious place where the choreography kind of gets messed up by the fact that the engine can't render more than one line at once. The fact that they were obviously supposed to be all screaming together, but didn't. It's just very odd.
Hello, I'm not in right now. I'm out catching doing my shopping. But please fling yourself into my defensive stasis fields after the tone, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible.
I can get through those fields. I just have the tire right.
Also, there's an aspect of that earlier joke with the skates that was kind of overly mean, which is the whole idea of like, oh, the fact that the Cosmo doesn't elaborate on what its plan is, and Timmy just kind of goes along with it, and then Wanda just kind of like disregards it, knowing that Cosmo's an idiot, but it's like, it doesn't really elaborate on what's really going on there, because it doesn't really discuss what's actually going on there. Like, it's just a stock Cosmo's an idiot joke that feels a little bit mean. Well, there's a similar joke in the second game, which is much better elaborated on, and actually makes sense of the character without reducing Cosmo to just being the stupid one. Simple, but not stupid in that level.
Crocker's secret fairy catching lair, and his new super secret fairy detecting and catching van.
Wow, you know a lot. Hey, let's let the air out of his tires. Now, Cosmo, we shouldn't be encouraging such antisocial behavior.
I've got a better idea. Since these anti-fairies are under our control now. There. One anti-fairy with my compliments. That'll keep Crocker off our backs for a while.
So let's get this last card hopping up on top of the fender of this car, shall we? This one's a fairly basic card. I kind of like where it's placed.
These usually get confiscated in school, because they're not educational.
But you learned everything you know from the Crimson Chief.
Yeah, again, they have the same line for every card, and it's just kind of dull. At least it differs for the level. It's just could have done more interesting stuff with it. It just didn't. So now let's be careful because this thing's moving. I want to grab a few of these stars because why not? They're an interesting pattern. I was like, I might as well weave around and play with the big stick instead of just riding it like a normal person. It's more interesting that way. To play and to watch. So let's move on and leave the level, shall we?
Wow, that was one long, weird day at school.
Oh no, it's Crocker! Boy, is he in for a surprise!
No! My beautiful van!
I guess Crocker's fairy catching van caught a fairy after all, but not in the way he expected. Did you enjoy your extra day in school, twerp? Actually, it was a refreshing change.
Ah!
Oh no, not this time. Ha, serves you right. Okay, that does it.
Aha! A babysitter. They're always fun.
That was a great day! Yeah, we kept Fairy World a secret, beat the anti-fairies, and collected some pages of the rules.
And there we have it. We've done with the third to last level. 2 more to go. Because we have 8 more cards to go. So let's save it. And I'll see you next time as we go into a much more interesting level. Or at least less frustrating anyway. So I'll see you then. Goodbye.